everybody knows the Wikipedia. Like everybody can look up what Shiragirl did. I want to know who Shira was before that. Like, where did you grow up? When did you decide that you wanted to change the world with your art? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. You can hear me. Okay. Just want to make sure
Yeah, I can
everything
hear you
is
okay.
loading. Okay. Cool. Because it's freezing a little bit on my end. But okay. So thank you. Hi. I grew up in Jersey. I'm a Jersey girl, actually. My dad is from the Bronx. My mom was born in Romania and grew up in Canada. So yeah, I was just like a nice Jewish girl from New Jersey and went to Penn, went to school in Philly, studied abroad in London, and then moved to New York and lived in Brooklyn for a long time. You know, I think what led me up to that moment, I had gotten involved in the Riot Girl NYC scene. I grew up like being a dancer and a performer, more so even than a singer, but I did do musical theater. And then in college, you know, started studying feminism, and I had a minor in theater arts and everything. And I actually choreographed a play that kind of changed my life. It was called She Cuts Herself, She Likes to Write. Am I frozen? Oh, shoot. Okay.
You're frozen. It's fine.
Just want to
I
make
got
sure
you.
it's good on your end.
So you wrote. Okay.
No, I didn't write it. I choreographed it.
Okay.
Gina Young wrote the play, and basically, this is how I met a bunch of the girls who were involved in Riot Girl NYC. And it kind of took everything I was studying in college about feminism, like, you know, into the real world and into real life. You know, I think for me, I was just so stoked to find a community. I was also at that time coming out. You know, it was a very like different time to be queer. And I found this community and I was like, this is really cool. You know, I was kind of like taking pride in being like alternative. I just always have been very action oriented, you know, like I think a lot of people in this life will sit around and complain about all the things that they don't like. And, you know, I'm always just like, what can we do? You know? So I met this group of dynamic women, one of them, Megan Storm, who's one of my best friends to this day and, you know, who I've been touring with all year on the Warped Tour. And, you know, we just inspired each other. They were very talented women in bands and all girl hardcore bands and, you know, doing cool things. And that's when I decided I want to do music, you know, even though my mom sort of would joke around growing up like, oh, Shira, you can't sing, you know, but like I never got vocal lessons or anything, you know? And so in my mind, I was like, oh, I can dance and I'm a good performer and I can act, but I can't sing, you know? Then I discovered like Kathleen Hanna and Riot Girl and Bikini Kill. And I'm like, wow, you actually don't need to sing, right? Punk rock was very freeing me because it's like, these people just screaming into a mic, right? It's just more about what do you have to say, right? Like what is the statement? What is the meaning, you know? And so I think I felt really freed by that. And I studied abroad in London and started recording music. And kind of that's how I broke into it. So that was sort of like, yeah, the backstory. But I went to college. I went to college initially for to do science research. Yeah, I wanted to find a cure for Crohn's disease because I was diagnosed when I was 14. And then I went to Penn and they had a very cool program called biological basic behavior. So then I was like, oh, maybe I'll go more towards psychology. I slowly sort of inched away from that. Penn had this crazy like pre-med track and it was like, you take one chemistry course and like, you know, I'm like, I got a B. I was always like super like overachiever. Like, you know, they grade on a curve. I'm like, I can't get a B. But, you know, there was this whole like pre-med, you know, culture. And I was like, I don't want to be any part of that. And then I just slowly was like, you know what, I'm going to major in communications and minor in theater arts and get involved in the dance company. And so growing up, I danced a lot. I danced competitively. And then I also went to a high school that was math, science, and tech. So I did have kind of that tech background, you know, but I was like the artsy girl at like the science high school, you know?
That's crazy. And eventually you have to choose, like, cause you're, you know, you can't do it all. Like you can love like the science and medicine, but then you, like the arts, it sounds like the call was so strong, like you couldn't ignore it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I actually had a professor who sort of, you know, my first semester, I did like a writing seminar or something. And, you know, my writing was always very like creative and kind of non-traditional. And he was like, oh, can I ask like what your major is? I'm like, oh, I'm not sure. Maybe, you know, biological basic behavior. And he's like, you really have a talent. And then I started taking, you know, cinema classes and other things and, you know, art history. I was one class away from an art history minor, you know, but I started opening up. And I think about that professor a lot because I'm just like, you know, who knows? You know, sometimes there's just like these conversations that you'll remember for the rest of your life. You're like, yeah, maybe things would have gone a different way if he hadn't said that. Who knows? You know, maybe think, you know.
It's crazy because I still remember my seventh grade science teacher telling me science wasn't my subject. And then I went into journalism. And like, you know what I mean? You wonder
Yeah.
how your trajectory would have shifted. But one of the things, I mean, Oz, you do get things done. Like communications, 100% fits you because you pulled a band together. I have to admit, like the voice thing, like it's something with women always feel self-conscious about their voice. Like I don't think Henry Rollins cared what he sounded like.
Right,
He was
exactly.
like, oh, I'm off key or whatever. And like
Yeah.
so you were like, whatever, I want to start a band. So how did you find your people? Did you like call
It
to the
took a
universe?
while because like I went to London and I just recorded with the producer. And so it did take a while. And I came back, I was like, I want to put a band together, but I knew not the first thing. And I was also kind of leaning towards being more like electro punk, like Peaches was a really big influence. And
Yes.
so my girlfriend at the time was a DJ. So we kind of just started where she would just spin the tracks and kind of scratch over it. And then we slowly were like, let's add a guitarist, let's add live drums, and then I met Tim Armstrong from Rancid on Warped Tour 03, which changed my life. So the summer after I graduated, I went on Warped Tour and after I graduated college, and I was working for the Truth campaign. And then I got like introduced to this whole like sort of other world that I didn't really like know about, like obviously I knew about pop punk, what I saw on MTV, I knew Blink 182 and whatever, but I didn't know about this whole like subculture, but I didn't understand like where are all the chicks? And people would say, girls don't play this kind of music, but I'm like, I know that's not true because I had all these friends in bands,
Yeah.
So, but even then, like, there's something about a scene where you do get judged, and some people think, oh, you're not punk enough, and then like, and then it's like, then people who like see you with your pink hair are like, oh, she's weird, so you really have to kind of like believe in yourself because you'll get it from all angles, like, oh, you can't sing, oh my god, you're an amazing performer, and oh, like, what, I thought she's just a dancer, now she's trying to be a pop star, like, it's like people have their opinions. So, but then going on Warped Tour, like, kind of opened, it was like an unlock for me because I always felt like I wanted to have impact like bigger than myself. Like, being on stage is my happy place. Since I was 3 years old, always loved performing. I always felt like, I had a gift for it. But, maybe it was something in my head where I was like, oh, but I don't really have a great voice and I want to put others on. But, I always just felt it was bigger than myself. I've had managers tell me, Shira, just focus on your own career. You would be so much further. I'm just tripping over my cords here. And I said, no, because I had this vision of an all-girl crew and, a movement. And I just always felt like it was bigger than myself, So, obviously creating a community like for women and booking all these all-girl bands, on at the Shiragirl stage on Warped Tour and everything, like that helped me connect to other musicians, which down the line helped when I started Gritty and Pink, But yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't easy. I did kind of go back to my initial community of the Riot Girls that I met, some of who kind of turned on me because they were like, what are you doing? Like, oh, now you're going to like roll with the boys or, but the real people, the true people will like stick with you on your journey, and yeah, like I met musicians through friends and just kind of put it together. And then I met my longtime drummer, Rain Palladino, and she really changed it for me because her thing was like, okay, focus on the music, stand in one place. I'm like, no, I got to jump around, and like deliver the vocals, so she was my musical director and really kind of helped with that. And then when I moved to New York, obviously there's like so many more musicians that are there. And so it was easier to like tap in, but yeah, I mean, it's hard. Being committed to an all girl band is hard because it's just harder to find.
I had it for like 5 minutes. For some reason I've never had the all girl band. I have a band now, but it's all like dads and me. We're all like parents. But I know people can like Google Shiragirl, but I want to be taken back to the moment with this pink RV. Like when you woke up, did you get it? Where did you get this pink RV? And you parked it outside the fence? And that's
we actually drove in. Okay, so as I mentioned, I went on the Warped Tour the summer I graduated college, worked for the Truth campaign. That's when I saw like Why Were There No Chicks? I literally like approached Kevin Lyman, who led the tour, and was like, where are the girls on it? Like I was always just very outspoken. And I think because I was working for a sponsor, I sort of had that freedom because, it's like, they can't kick me off the tour. What are they going to do? Like he would actually come on our tour bus and like wine and dine us, and so I became like a actual spokesperson for the Truth campaign. I don't know if you're familiar with Truth. It's like anti-tobacco for teens.
Yep.
So So I was on this tour. I made a lot of friends. I met Kevin. He was doing this girls' garage tour at the time. I was very new into doing music. Like I just had a few songs. I had stickers, you know. And he was. We asked if we could have an opening slot on the tour, and I had a life-size Shiragirl box, like a Barbie doll box that we literally like color matched to the Barbie doll. I was always ahead of my time. People have told me that, and I have to say I agree. You know, but for me, I just wanted to just kind of make a scene wherever I went. And so yeah, my girlfriend and I, she was DJing on the tour as well. We ended up, we were just inspired by what we saw on the tour. We're like, we should make a mobile stage and go on tour and just do it. And we ended up finding like an old 89 Chevy RV up in Massachusetts. And we're just like, let's just tour the country. And I had met Tim Armstrong from Rancid at Warped 03, and he was like, oh, if you're ever in LA, like come by, we could do some recording. He listened to my music. He's like, I love your music. He had just finished producing Pink's third record. So I was like, oh my God, you know, and we just clicked, you know, sometimes you just click with people. And so I was like, okay, I got to take him up on that offer. So we literally bought this RV, painted it pink, and like drove to LA on what we called the Play As You Go tour, which we would just roll into a city like 1 week at a time and just pick up shows. And we didn't know what we were doing, you know, the music was not that great, you know, but we were just all about making a scene. And then finally made it to LA, and it was my first like adult time being in LA. Lived in an RV off Silver Lake Boulevard, recorded with Tim Armstrong, and just made it all happen. And then that was the summer where we were like, okay, we want to crash Warped Tour. And we did ask first. We said, there was this girls' garage tent. We said, can we bring girl bands into the girls' garage tent? We know so many friends. And we could DJ. And Kevin said, oh, there's a lot going on this year because it was the 10th anniversary of the tour. So, am I frozen? I'm frozen on my end.
A little frozen.
It's okay,
I'm digging this story. Right. I'm already seeing the movie, by the way. Like, this is very cinematic. I see it in my head.
Yes, I love it. It is a movie. I love that you said that. So yeah, basically he was like, let's do it next year because, you know, we got a lot going on this year. Let's do it next year. When you're 21, next year is 10 years. Next year, like, you know. So I felt high on life. I'm like, I just recorded Tim Armstrong. Like, fuck it. So, and we did have credentials because we were guests of The Truth. And I think we were even going to maybe like, the original plan was to play like a song at the Truth spot. Like we used to they had an orange truck, and she would just like spin my backing tracks, and I would just like do like a random performing, and people liked it and stuff. So yeah, we just drove the RV in. We kind of like, you know, we waved like we were supposed to be there, just act like you knew. But we drove into the grounds, parked across from the skate ramp next to the Truth truck, and fully expected to get in trouble for it. But we were able to do it because people saw us. They knew us from last year. Just, you know, when you just act like you're supposed to be there, we got there super early, just drove in. And which is funny because thinking back now, it's like obviously they were on the radio. It's like, what the hell is this pink RV? And Kevin came out, you know, and we were like holding our breath, and he's just like, Shira, and I'm like, hi Kevin, you know, and he just said, so are you on for the rest of the tour? And I felt both an invitation and like a challenge, like, oh, you want to roll with the big boys? Like, let's see how far you can make it, you know? But he also said that he had a soft spot in his heart because he used to follow the Grateful Dead around in a sandwich truck, and like, you know, and he saw, like, he always considered me this like hippie, and he was like, he saw some of myself in him, you know, and he was like, all right, like his thing was always, if you can make it happen, I'll let it happen. So, and there were a lot of people, you know, even women like working the tour in the back office that were not stoked about it. Like, what are these girls doing here? You know, like they weren't really like down for the cause. They were just like, you know, a lot of people, when you do what you want to do and go for things, people get jealous because, you know, they feel like they have to ask for permission, or they're scared to do what they, you know, so yeah, I've dealt with a lot of that in my life. Yeah.
You know, like no risk, no reward. Like you've got to like, make an impact. You had to take a big risk. You took a chance. And what was the worst that could happen? They told you to pack up. They called the police. Like that would have been in the news, and they would have like gotten in trouble. But the most punk rock thing that happened on the Warped Tour that summer was instigated by you.
I love that you said that, because the following year we actually won an MTV Warpy Award for the most punk rock way to get invited to the family. So that was cool. God. MTV News, you know. But yeah, and I remember that day we were in Fullerton and the doors opened and the girls came running. You know, they saw Pink, because the audience was still half women, even though it was all dudes on stage. There was literally only one female singer the first year I was on the tour. There wasn't one girl with instruments, except for there was this band Go Betty Go that was on the local stage for like a day or two, you know, and I was like, oh, they're rad, you know, but I just like didn't get it. I'm like, why, you know? And obviously it wasn't just Kevin's fault. It was a bigger industry problem. Labels weren't signing girl bands. Rock radio wasn't playing women, you know, so it was a bigger problem. And that's kind of what he would say to me. Like, look, I have to sell tickets at the end of the day. You know, he's got to reflect what the industry is doing. So, but yeah, you know, there were bets against us, like making it to each city and everything, but we did. And then when the tour rolled into New York, I said, you know what? I would like to present some of my girls, like friends' bands. And he was like, again, like, if you can make it happen, I'll let it happen. So Dusty Randall's Island, we did it. And somehow I got Blondie's old sound guy, Bubbles, who worked at Mask Sound, to like show up with a full PA and like do our sound for free. And yeah, I don't even, looking back, some of the things I did, I'm like, how did I do that? You know?
It was, I mean, like, it's incredible, like, what you managed to do. And I want to talk about what you said. You said it a couple of times. I've spoken to men in my life, I'm not going to mention any names, but who said, oh, there aren't as many women making music. That's why they're not in festivals, which we know is absolute bullshit.
Right.
What do you say to people when they say that to you, or when they even allude to that? I don't know. I
just offer receipts. I say, I know that's not true. I say, what about this band? What about that band? My friends are in these all-girl hardcore bands. Check out this video. You know, now it's easier. You know, we didn't have smartphones back then. We had our sidekicks, you know. But you just have to offer receipts, you know, as the kids say these days.
Yeah, and what about the festival situation? I know you returned to Warp, and it was a different experience. And then I saw the CBGB Fest, and the new punk stage was all women-infused bands, not just female-fronted, but like women in them.
I love that. Women-infused. I love that.
2 years ago, I saw Demi Lovato. Her entire band was all women. Olivia,
her guitarist and bassist was my guitarist and bassist. And her musical director, like literally, like she is dope.
Sorry, you froze. Now I'm
sorry. Yeah, you're frozen a little bit.
Well, are we making progress? Talk to me.
I'm letting it like catch up because there's like a little bit of a delay. So, okay, I think we're back now. So sorry. I hope it's not my connection. Sometimes my internet is a little shaky.
It's fine. I am waiting with bated breath for your big thoughts on this topic, though.
Okay, so sorry. What's the question? I think I missed it.
I was just highlighting some statistics that female fronted and female infused bands are more visible in some festivals. CBGB, right? New Punk Stage. You mentioned Warped Tour. I saw Demi Lovato last year, her entire band, all women. Chapel Roan's entire band, all women. How much progress are we making? What are you seeing?
I definitely see progress. It's funny that you bring up Demi Lovato because I don't know if you heard her musical director, bassist, and guitarist both played in my band. Shout out to Leanne Bose and Constance Antoinette. Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, they're so.
I was so proud of them, seeing them in the VMAs, you know? I was like tears of joy. But yeah, no, we are making progress, you know? We're still not at parity. There is a site that you've probably seen called Book More Women, where they literally break it down by percentage of lineups. And they'll show what does the lineup look like without any bands that don't even have one woman on it. Even if it's all dudes and just one bassist or whatever, they still include that. But it's still, you know, we still have a long way to go. So I do think we are making progress, but I also think people are very quick to say, you know, it's better now or it's not a thing anymore. But it very much is. You know, you can have incremental progress without like a complete solution, you know. And I think also people will ask when we do the all-girl jam or when we do our stages at Warped Tour, like, oh, like, shouldn't it be integrated? Like, you don't need a whole stage for women or you don't need a whole like set for women. Like, you know, we book on talent. We book based on gender. We book on talent. It's like, yeah, as if we don't book on talent, you know. But I said, you know, it's not about that. It's just about that if we didn't have that stage on Warped Tour, we came back, you know, the following year with an official stage, presented over 300 female-fronted bands, including Paramore on their first ever tour. And, you know, if that stage hadn't been there, those 300 bands would not have played Warped Tour. You know what I mean? So it's like people look at it like, oh, they should be on the main stage. Well, yeah, they should be on the main stage, but how are they going to get there? You know? Like, so, like, if no one's giving them a chance and radios aren't playing them and labels aren't signing them, you know? So yeah, I think there's been some progress, but I still think we have like a long way to go. And it's certainly these days where it feels like things are sliding back with women's rights, you know, so.
That's a whole other conversation. And I'm just, you know, there's great things happening, but then when like Roe was overturned, and I love your song. I was, you know, on the Spotify trying to like check out what you've done since like COVID hit, and I'm like, that's a really great song. I wish like we
Thank you.
had that same. I wish like we could have latched as a movement and gotten it back.
I
Gotten
know.
things codified. Like,
Yes.
so we can't forget where we need to be. Yeah.
I know. It's so crazy. Like, just the rollback is just insane to think about. Like, why couldn't we have foresaw this? Why couldn't we have prevented this? You know?
I want to
But
talk about gritty pink though.
yes.
These trends are super important, but what you're doing now, why women should join Gritting Pink. Sorry, that was me kicking my table. A lot of women they're over 35, and it's harder if you're an aging woman than if you're an aging man. I'm just being honest from my
100%.
experience. I feel like I have to do my hair in a certain way just to look younger. It's really wild. And I see this beacon of hope when I see the In Pink network. I'm like, wow, I might be able to network and find backdoor ways to make an impact, to get an opening slot. When the dude band that's my same age and no better than me is getting that opportunity.
Right.
So this is where I want to talk about is how you can help, how Gritty and Pink can help.
Yeah, so we have our platform In Pink, which is a platform to hire women in all aspects of the industry. Beyond musicians, we also have photographers, videographers, marketing, business, graphics. And so it's free to list, and we don't take a cut of what you earn. So definitely, anyone listening, if you're female creative, women or non-binary, inpink.com, go on and add a listing. And it's backed by Live Nation, and we're always searching the network to hire for various events, festivals, opportunities. So there's that. And then we do these Gritty and Pink all-girl jams. Right now we're based in LA, but we've done jams in other cities. We've done other festivals. We've done New York, so, just getting involved in any of the jams is always good. But, being on In Pink is really the first step. And then, obviously these days there's social media, just like reach out, and stay engaged in the community.
So yeah, that's the one thing. Like you have to be engaged. You have to support other people. What comes around goes around. That's something.
Absolutely.
My band got to open for Tiffany a couple of years ago. Like
amazing.
Tiffany, it was
so fun.
Amazing, but it didn't happen because I'm necessarily more talented than the next person. It's I communicated. I stayed engaged in my music scene. I supported other musicians, and then the stars aligned for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing that sometimes people forget. Like it's not just about putting out music. It's about who you show up for and how you show up.
Totally. And I think that's a good point that you mentioned about, about showing up for other musicians, because you can't expect everyone to come to your shows if you're not going out and supporting theirs. So yeah, I think that's a good point. Just like attending conferences and just talking to people, like not staying in your lane, but like actually, going up to people and connecting and staying in touch.
When you go to conferences and you speak, like I think you were at the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp. What are the things that you get asked the most? Like what do like emerging musicians, especially female and or non-binary musicians, what do they ask you in terms of advice? And
it's a good question. I mean, I definitely get asked to tell the Crashing Warped Tour story a lot. I think people ask how they can sort of overcome like shyness, or a lot of people, I don't like to network. And, it's like, a lot of women don't like to make asks. And like, that's always something I talk about, like, asking you shall receive, or some people say, closed mouths don't get fed, or whatever it is. But it's like becoming comfortable, like asking for what you need and asking for what you're looking for is a big thing. And so I coach a lot of women on networking. We have just launched a new membership that is in a pilot right now called Gritty Club. And we're doing events, both in person and virtual. And we do a lot of group coaching and things like, networking hacks and, like really specific tips to, stay in touch with industry people and kind of how to develop your relationships. I mean, everything is relationships at the end of the day. Even like, I don't know how you got that opening gig for Tiffany, but I'm sure you developed a relationship, whether it was the booker, the manager, right? The agent, someone's ass you stayed on, right? And like, and you got it, sometimes all it takes is persistence, So I think people ask me like, just like, how do you do it? And I just try to kind of break it down. And I say, look, it's awkward for me too. Like, yes, I am definitely more extroverted than most, but it's never not awkward. I was at the Live Nation office, and they invested in my company, but I never met the CEO. He did look at my investor deck, and he was right there. So I just went up to him, but did I have to force myself to do it? Absolutely. Was I nervous? Of course, but I was just like, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret it forever, when am I going to get this opportunity? So I just went right up to him, like, I'm so sorry to bother you. I just want to thank you for investing in my company, Gritty and Pink. And he was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Let's have a meeting. And then we had an event at Live Nation a couple weeks ago, and I emailed him. He wrote me back, and I just said, hey, would love for you to come. And he's like, oh, I'm in New York this week, but thanks. And then after it happened, sent him a video, and he said, looks awesome. Congrats. So just you kind of have to have, people say have balls. We say have tits, right? You gotta, have some tits about it. But I think that's a big thing that people just ask me. He's just like, how do you do it? And it's you just have to sort of push yourself off a cliff. There really is there's hacks and tips for sure, but there's no button. It's you have to kind of just push yourself.
Well, so what, besides the Gritty Club, what is next for Gritty and Pink? When you look toward 2026, any hints? Or?
Well, we're very excited. We did this big partnership with Warped Tour coming back this year. That was awesome. And Mad Hippie Beauty, we love our partner. And so we are potentially looking at we did some warm-up shows. We did our own tour leading up to the 2 Warped Tours. And so we're potentially looking at doing, what would our own festival look like? What would our own tour look like aside from Warped Tour? And getting the right partners on board, the right artists and everything. So, I think that's a huge, long-standing dream that, we would love to do. I mean, Gritty and Pink, the name came from an article that was written about us 20 years ago, but we always thought, it'd be great to have a tour. So,
yeah, I'd like to, I mean, hoping New York would be obviously part of this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we love New York. We'll definitely be, doing New York. So, that, and then definitely developing the Gritty Club. And, we really want to help women, just stay on top of emerging technologies. That's an important thing. Obviously everything's moving so fast with AI, and there's a real fear about it. And we have to get ahead of it, and so, just helping people, connect, get gigs, find community, find your tribe. So
find your tribe. And finally, I do want to ask, what is next for all of your musical projects? I love Sublime, Shiragirl. I saw
Thank
you.
you.
I'm like, how many does she have going on? That's
I love it. So I do have some new music in the works. We've been recording with Tim Armstrong. We have a Sublime cover that's being mixed right now, and I won't say which one it is yet, but I don't know if you saw, I have a really fun side project called Sublime, all girl tribute to Sublime. I love Sublime. I thought they were way ahead of their time, and some people kind of look at them as a frat boy band, a bro band, but they had feminist themes in their music, and so I always talk about this when they were very progressive when we perform, but and people love it, all girls playing Sublime. So Shiragirl will be releasing a Sublime cover, and then some new music to come, and it feels like it's a new era, so very excited for that. But it is hard, to balance everything, of course, running the company and then having a personal life and health and the whole thing, so stress, just trying to balance it all.
No, I know. I mean, that's Rock Mommy, that's the whole theme, making it all work. It's not perfect, and not everyone's trajectory or pathway is going to look the same. So.
Yeah. And I have to say, I love what you're doing with Rock Mommy, and I feel it is so important. Megan, who I mentioned, Megan Storr, my friend of 20 years I've been doing music with, she's got 4 kids. And she did take a break from music, and now she's coming back to it. And, she brings her kids to the festival, and her daughter's starting to sing too. And it's cool to see how it can be integrated. But, for me, obviously I have a different path. I'm single. I don't have kids. And I kind of had a recent realization, because I was at Reese Witherspoon had a conference called Shine Away with Hello Sunshine, and again, there was a panel, and they were talking about being a mom, and I feel I hear there's a lot of programming for how to have it all and balance being a mom, and I love that. It's so important for moms, but I'm you don't really see a lot of women talking about the struggles of being a single woman, that's got its own set of, we're on our own, it's got its own set of challenges, and the stigma and the pressure from your family, and that feeling oh, am I missing out, but I can't do it all. And so that's something that I'm actually kind of leading into. I was asked to speak at an upcoming conference she leads, and it's about women kind of in different stages of their life. Some people are talking about divorce, some people are talking, about kids and different things. And I was I'm going to talk about, being an older single woman with no kids, and, just it can be very lonely, you know, but I love what I do, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
No, 100%. And just so you know, yeah, Rock Mommy might have been inspired by a mom and it's for moms, but we interview cat moms.
I am a cat mom. I love that.
We are very open in like our definition. Just, I
No,
think
it's
your story is
amazing.
great, it's uniquely yours. And I look forward to, I would love to hear that panel though. Like, like my friend Gail who founded Girls Rock, Girls Rule, like, she's also like a cat mama and she has her own things going on. She's trying to struggle like dating with like she's trying to balance
Right.
that with like contracting and getting older and then her parents and
Yeah. And good luck dating, with a rock and roll lifestyle. It's like, it's funny because it's like, I'm dating someone now and it's like, okay, like come out to the show, see what it's all about. Is this lifestyle for you? Because this is my life.
yeah, no, 100%. Well, I thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me because now like that I know you're a real person and not just this person I kind of idolize from afar. It's like kind of neat to see you.
Aw, thank you so much, Marissa. And it's great chatting with you. And props to everything you've done with Rock Mommy. And yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I have a lot of love for the moms. So.
And I have a lot of love for the grit. Thanks, Shira. Talk to you
Thank
later.
you. Bye.